Just last Sunday um, was the 39th anniversary of the Dartley shooting down in South Armagh. We were ministering down in South Armagh at that time. In fact, our evening service was on at the same time as the Dartley Pentecostal Church service, and the shooting went on on that particular evening, murdering 3 elders, injuring 7 others quite badly, and traumatizing all who were there in the church on that evening. Our own congregation was hit at that time in that a brother-in-law had been murdered of one of our members, and I had 2 of the funerals to conduct in the days that followed that fateful Sunday evening. The community was traumatized, and at that time I decided, I'm sure under God's guidance, to preach a series of sermons that were designed to bring encouragement to those who have been traumatized by that event. Almost 1,000 copies of the original edition of this book were sold, and the book made a great impact on those who read those messages. I have now put it into a different format, kept the substance of all the original messages, and I'm offering them to you now at this time. Are there times when you have been shocked maybe by news that you've got? Are there times when you have really been sent for six because of something that's happening to you or within you? And are there times when you as a Christian have doubted the reality of God's care for you? Well, these 8 sermons, try to address that very issue. The opening sermon in this little book is Jesus absent and present. We know something of the felt absence of Jesus at times of crisis, but we also know those times of his felt presence with us. Then, when we think about our troubles, the next chapter is on trouble working for us. It's not working against us if we could see it from God's perspective. And how do we see these troubles, these afflictions? Well, the psalmist tells us that they are God's servants, and they're God's servants for good, for our spiritual good. That's a hard lesson to stomach, but that is what the Bible teaches us. On top of that, there is this sort of overarching theme or teaching that we are God's special chosen people, and he has got a special interest in us as his people. At times we find there's just that one thing that keeps nagging at us. It may be a health issue, it may be something else. Paul had that. And there's a chapter here on Paul's thorn in the flesh. It always seems to exert its painful influence at times in our lives. Then we look at this wonderful teaching of divine grace and divine power. These are God's, and these are available to us. When we're feeling very weak, and at times we all feel weak and we need strength imparted to us, there's a chapter 7, on strength renewed. And then the very last chapter in this book, Courage Under the Cross, is about looking unto Jesus. The writer to the Hebrews tells us that we are to run with perseverance the race that is set before us. That's fine, that's all dandy and good, but how are we to run that race? We are to run looking unto Jesus. There's no break in the sentence there in the Greek. We run looking. So that's a sort of a précis of what's in the book Courage Under the Cross. Then the other book that I would draw to your attention is a book entitled Your Refuge in Difficult Times. And these are studies that I did on Psalm 46. Psalm 46 is one of the go-to psalms when we are going through difficulties of one kind and another. And the chapters here explain to us how God is our refuge. It states that God is our refuge, but then it goes on to explain how. Secondly, faith in God quenches fear. We all know something about fear, don't we? We know what it is to be, in a sense, terrified. Faith in God quenches fear. Psalmist talks about calm in the city of God, calm amongst the people of God when things are in upheaval. And then we look at Emmanuel. We're coming up to Christmas time. And in Christmas time, we think of the incarnation. We think of God coming in the flesh in the person of his Son. The psalmist tells us about that all those years before Christ came. Emmanuel, God is with us. And Emmanuel, God will help us. Do you ever wonder where your help will come from? It comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. God speaks into our hearts, but what happens when God speaks? What does that mean? There's a chapter on that. And then come and see what the Lord has done. There's 2 chapters on that, because he has done marvelous things if only we had the eyes to see them. And then perhaps the best known verse in the whole psalm is, be still and know that I am God. I am God. I am in control. Not your suffering, not your circumstances, not the things that are happening to you. And the psalm ends up with worship to the living God. My friends, when we worship him, things tend to fall into place. When the psalmist in Psalm 73 was going through all kinds of doubts and fears, and he was hounded and persecuted by other people, when he went into the house of God, then, he said, then I understood what their end would be. When you come into the presence of God, when you come and fall down before him and worship, and it changes our perspective on the things that happen. I often say that the 4 most important words that any minister utters before a service starts or as a service starts are the words, let us worship God. The call to worship. And then the very last chapter tries to open up what's meant by being in the presence of God. Wonderful, wonderful stuff. These books I will bring with me to the dinner on the 3rd of December. If you would want a copy, please speak to me. I'll have some copies with me in the car. Please speak to me, and I will be happy to give you what copies I have. These 2 books are £5 each, so they'll not break the bank, and you may even want to get an additional copy to give to a friend at Christmas time. Thank you for watching.